Hello, on January 18th here in Tucson, Arizona, 2024. I want to, I came across, lots of times I have these quotes that I have stuck in my mind and I'm like, oh, where did that come? I'll know the author, but I won't know where, I want to know the source. So I'll Google it and it will be something that I've put up on my own blog or for one of my books or something. But anyway, here's this quote that segues into uh, the film and the couple of books I want to talk about today. It's from Georges Bernanos. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. French novelist, author of one of the greatest Catholic novels I think we have, Diary of a Country Priest. We should talk about that sometime because it's also been made into a great movie by Robert Bresson. But anyway, here's the quote from Georges Bernanos. Each of us is in some way or another, and in succession, a criminal and a saint. So anyway, I've been following along with I should just say I'm continuing to read Father Donald Haggardly's book, Conversion, Spiritual Insights into an Essential Encounter with God. Someone commented on one of the videos here and pointed out that there's a podcast called Discerning Hearts that you can get on YouTube or Spotify, and Father Haggardly does a whole series, I think 21 videos, about half an hour long, about St. John of the Cross, who's the subject of his newest book. So this whole idea of the contemplative anywhere, but especially in a way in the city, because he's in New York City, and I've lived in cities all my life. Tucson's a way, way, way smaller city than I have lived in the past, but still a city, and of course we're in the midst of a secular culture, so it really speaks to me. And I'll just read this was an epigraph from Father Haggardly, and it's from Jacques Maritain, another French guy, as you may know, a theologian and philosopher, kind of, I think, mid-1900s. He had a wife, Raissa, also a philosopher. Anyway, Jacques Maritain says, you must begin by an interior act. He's talking about surrendering completely to God. You must begin by an interior act, a little squeeze of the trigger by which you abandon yourself entirely into the hands of our Lord. And man, isn't that what we long for? It's what I long for all my life. And then you just, I think if I had really done that, I would know it. But I'm in perpetual doubt that I've not about Christ or the existence of God or anything like that, but about my commitment. Anyway, I had a very deep moment, probably in part because I've been reading this book about a second conversion, that you may go along for years, very, very ardent and faithful and seeking and questioning, but still there's a deeper, or that's been leading to a deeper surrender. So anyway, I went to adoration yesterday, St. Ambrose up the street, Mass and adoration. And I had this very deep moment just gazing at the monstrance. And, I thought of St. Therese of Lisieux, who had offered herself as a Holocaust victim of love. Just take me. Unfortunately, I always start thinking about those martyrs who were really, really horrible. Paul Miki, M-I-K-I, I think, and that John de Brebeuf guy, the Jesuit. And it's just like the horrible, horrible death by really slow, hideous torture. When you think of that, but yesterday it was kind of like, whatever. If that is to happen, somehow you'll be with me, and probably in the early 21st century United States, it won't. But you never know. but it was more, you can't start thinking about that stuff. It's just, you take, anyway. But then this morning, so I was kind of, oh wow, maybe that was a deeper, and I did have a day, I spend a ton. I mean, my life really is a life of a lot of solitude. Like, there's many days when I don't talk to anyone all day. I mean, I send a bunch of emails and texts, and so it's not like I'm not in touch with people. But anyway, I woke up this morning and I just felt like cranky and really tired. Maybe not, and anxious, but who knows? But that's not the sign of that kind of peace, as Christ says, "My peace I give you, not the peace of the world. In this world you will have trials and tribulations." Anyway, the point is to just keep on the path. Keep doing the next indicated right thing, as we say in recovery. So, but I'm grateful to Father Haggardly. But anyway, but the movie, so one of the movies I watched last week, fantastic, Alfred Hitchcock. It was his favorite of all his movies, Shadow of a Doubt, 1943, Joseph Cotton and Teresa Wright. So it's this incredibly great a movie about sort of evil coming to the seemingly idyllic small town. And Joseph Cotton plays Uncle Charlie, the youngest brother of the mother, okay. So then the oldest daughter of the family is also named Charlie. She's named after this beloved uncle who's a total psycho. He presents as very witty and urbane, but he goes around seducing and strangling rich widows, and there's this whole weird kind of covert incest theme where Charlie and Charlie, this kind of twinning thing, and Charlie, who's maybe, they never say how old she is. She still lives at home, so she's, I don't know, maybe supposed to be 18 or something. She looks a lot older than that. But anyway, there's this weird sort of undercurrent of they're a couple almost when he comes to visit, and he gives her this ring, puts his ring on her finger. Of course, he got it off of the corpse of some poor woman that he strangled. And there's a lot of, I mean, you got to watch the movie really closely because there's all kinds of great, it starts out with Uncle Charlie in his bed in this rooming house. Like, there's a whole lot of beds in this thing. And then the first time you see the kid, Charlie, she too is on her bed musing, "Oh, our life is so boring. We don't talk about anything meaningful." She's kind of existentially tormented in this little town of Santa Rosa, California. Anyway, he when he comes, he stays in her bedroom. There's a scene where he plucks a rose off of this bouquet on the dresser. And I didn't even think of this when I read some commentaries, like a symbolic deflowering. Anyway, it's really, there's not a drop of blood in it, as is so often the case in Hitchcock movies, but it is really a picture of evil, what real evil kind of looks like. There's this scene where Uncle Charlie says to the supposedly innocent young girl, do you know that if you walked down the street and ripped the fronts off the houses, you'd find vermin? Do you know the world is a foul sty? And all I could think of was, that's how you think when you're in the grip of active alcoholism, because your soul has been so corrupted. Anyway, you can watch it, and there's a bunch of commentary on it. As I said, it was Hitchcock's favorite movie, supposedly, that he made. And it's just every shot. There's a shot when Uncle Charlie comes into town. He's on a train, and the smoke that is billowing off the top of the train is like jet black. So you just know evil is descending on the town. But it's just really, it's just a sheer entertainment. It's kind of beyond compare, but you can really go deep into, this pondering of evil, and how we often do think, oh, our lives are so, oh, if only for a little glitter, a little excitement. And it's kind of, be careful what you wish for. The guy who plays Clarence, the angel in It's a Wonderful Life, it plays the father, Henry, I think his name is Henry Travers. And before I move on, the other thing is, I mean, supposedly Uncle Charlie's all evil, and the young Charlie, the girl, is all good. But you definitely, as the thing progresses, there's this one point, because she becomes onto him, and she's trying to get him to leave town. She doesn't want to wreck her family by exposing him. So, but she's really trying to get him out of town. And there's this one point where she says, I will kill you if I have to. And it's like, oh. And he, of course, has some good in him. He possibly was traumatized as a kid, and that comes out. So, the little good and the worst of us, and, that we all have that potential in us. Anyway, it's just a fantastic movie. Shadow of a Doubt. You can rent it or find it all over the place. Or again, if you have Criterion Channel, you can just watch it on there, I think. I think that's where I watched it. So that, and with talk of good and evil, I segue into another book I'm reading. And this is by Romano Gardini, who was born Italian, naturalized German priest, is actually Monsignor, 1885 to 1968. Apparently, Pope Benedict Ratzinger was deeply influenced by Romano Gardini, and he wrote, I think his probably most well-known work is called The Lord, 1950 something. And that was a book that was instrumental in my own conversion. I don't even know how I came across it, but I read it, and it's just this, he's incredibly articulate and, of course, smart. He's a theologian. But not sort of abstruse, if that's the word. And so he just brought alive the person of Christ in this way that was unbelievably compelling. He just goes through his entire life, death, resurrection. So, but anyway, the book I'm reading is called The Rosary of Our Lady. Next up after this, can you see it? The light is shining on it. The Rosary of Our Lady. So it's a whole book about the Rosary. There's another book called The Lord's Prayer that I'm going to read next. But because I had a hard time kind of, Jesus I was always on board with. Mary, I felt because of my past, like, oh, Mary would not want to, sort of consort with the likes of me. And I did. And then, of course, we all have mother stuff. But at I won't tell the story, but we have these seminal moments in your spiritual life, and you can often remember the exact place, maybe not the date, but the place where you were when this kind of epiphany came. And I was actually at this writer's residency at the Dorland Mountain Arts Center in Temecula, California. I was walking up this hill, and I just remember, like, the thought was maybe praying the rosary would put me more in solidarity and reconcile me more spiritually, emotionally, every way, conscience-wise, with my own mother, who at that point, I think she may have already died, but she definitely was at least in the kind of latter throes of Alzheimer's. And so I started praying the rosary. This was many years ago. And I carry a rosary with me at all times, as many of us do. But I started thinking, let me read a book about it. So first of all, he points out, this is so sad. I mean, of all the thousands of times I've said the rosary, I never really stopped to think about this, that the Hail Mary, the first part, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, is, of course, the angel Gabriel's greeting to Mary at the Annunciation. And then, blessed art thou among women, blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus, is Elizabeth's greeting to Mary in the visitation, when Mary visits her, goes across the hill country and visits her Liz's cousin when they're both pregnant. which were also the first two mysteries of the joyful mysteries, the first kind of set of mysteries of the Rosary. But somehow I never put that together. And so just stuff like that. I'm embarrassed to admit this because probably everyone in the world, of course, knows that from day one. But I'm just going to read a couple very, very short. This whole idea of the word spoken aloud and he's kind of addressing the naysayers who say, oh, you just say the same thing over and over again. It doesn't mean anything. And so Gardini says, it is said sometimes that and this goes to the word. In the beginning was the word, and the word was made flesh and dwelt among us. He doesn't say that, but I thought that. Anyway, Gardini writes, it is said sometimes that the word is spiritual, but that is not true. The word is like man. It has a body like a mortal, the form of notes and sounds. It has spirit, again like a man, sense that becomes manifest in the audible. And it has, like man, a heart, the vibration of the soul which fills it. The word is man himself in his finest and most agile form. That is why the word has such power. So that's just an example of the kind of incredibly deep insights he has. Then this is not especially apropos of the Rosary, but I just loved this thought. He says there are two possibilities of greatness. One is to be great oneself, a creator, a hero, a herald, a man of special destiny. And it's like, okay, missed that boat. The other is to love such a great person. And this possibility seems of equal value. And I just thought, oh, yes, because we love Christ. This is Saint Teresa of Lisieux, right? In order to comprehend the life of someone else, one's own heart should measure up to the image. One's own heart should measure up to the image of the beloved. What do we mean then when we say that Jesus Christ was the substance of Mary's life? So he does tie it in with the Rosary, but I just love that. We may not be great ourselves, but to love, to recognize and love a person who is great is also of value. Therese, our vocation is love. Not wanting one drop of Christ's precious blood to be wasted. Anyway, and then he points out this other fact that I never thought of, and that is how much we owe to Mary for our knowledge of Christ's childhood, because where else did these stories come from? He says that we can only say that Mary's recollections, even though she says very little in the Gospels herself, as we know. She says, do what he tells you at the wedding at Cana. Of course, we have the Magnificat. My soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord. And before that, how can this be, since I have no relations with a man, at the Annunciation? But anyway, nonetheless, she permeates the Gospels, as he says. We can only say that Mary's recollections, her testimony, her whole life are the foundation of all accounts of Christ's childhood. And they are not only the foundation, for how could she have lived with the Master for 30 years and not spoken about him after his departure? No one can gauge the effect of her narrative on the understanding of Christ and the spread of Christian teaching. So, because he has this whole chapter on the unbelievable centrality of Mary to our faith, so I'm about a third of the way through it, much more to come, but I can already say I heartily recommend the book, because why not have as deep an understanding as we can of these beautiful sort of ever ancient, ever new practices that are millions of people before us have. I'm looking at a little prayer card of St. Maximilian Kolbe that's on this kind of bulletin board I have above my desk, who was devoted to Mary, one of the greatest saints to me, died in place of another, volunteered to die in place of another inmate at Auschwitz, Polish priest. So anyway, there you go. Shadow of a Doubt, Alfred Hitchcock, and the Rosary of Our Lady, Romano Gardini. Anyway, it's fun. It's fun to do these. I'm trying to do one of these a week. I read it. I read a piece in Angeles News, Archdiocese of LA. I write for them, by this wonderful writer. I like him. He's a father, Robert Brennan, and he wrote this piece about, does everyone have to have a Catholic podcast, and how, not that this is a podcast, there's like about 18 cuts below a podcast, but he's saying like everyone's an expert on ecclesial matters, and there's what, please do it. And I totally get what he's saying. And I laughed. I was like, this is my possibly pathology, but I'm like, if a ton of people were like watching, I would perhaps feel that this was an ego somehow feeding proposition, but since barely anyone, because my following remains forever like teeny, somehow I feel like it's okay. That's okay, because therefore it's just a total offering. I'm just moved to share stuff, excitement, and discoveries, or whatever I've been kind of reading, watching, and pondering. So anyway, thank you so much, and carry on. It's warmed up a little bit this week in Tucson, so I am not a cold weather person. It's part of the reason I moved from New England, and I admire those hardy souls, Midwest, New England. So anyway, keep warm wherever you may be.